takes a spear and impales those who are flagrantly transgressing the law, those who were, through their wrong actions, encouraging a plague. When his spear hits home, the plague ceases. And in our Torah portion, we learn that Pinchas is rewarded with a Brit Shalom, an eternal covenant, a covenant of peace. I hate this story. I hate the plague. The moment of passion in a sacred place unsettles me. But what perturbs me more than that are my feelings towards Pinchas's response of sexual skewering. And I find the reward of covenant given, that there is a reward given for vigilante justice, detestable. Yet, here in our text, celebrated in traditional commentaries, it still remains. There are some things to celebrate in the narrative. An interpretation of Rashi is that Pinchas exposes the immorality here, even though it was perpetrated by those in power. And it takes strength and will and courage to speak truth to power. And others point out the reward comes in the next parasha and not immediately. It didn't take place last week when we read of the story, but this week, showing to the hothead Pinchas the value of waiting and patience. But still, such a reward for violence, how can such violence ever be justified? We live in a world upside down right now, more than just in our Torah portion. A world where not wearing a mask is unjustifiable, life-threatening violence. A world where the covenant of peace we live under is being assessed regularly as itself violent. I've spoken about the Black Lives Matter movement before, but today I want to speak about how this movement rubs against us as Jews. Why tonight? Well, in a world that is in some ways upside down, I have to be honest with you, and will be a shock to some, but when I moved to the United Kingdom in 2016, I lost track of professional sports, including professional football. I had never missed a Saturday, sometimes Sunday or Monday night of the sport. But since 2016, I've lost track of the trades, the players, the fantasy leagues. And I know the main reason for having a TV these days for many is to watch sports. And I don't even have a TV subscription and cannot on my TV watch sports. So when I hear anything about a football player, let alone hear more than once in a week, and it's not even the time of the Super Bowl, I know something has happened, and that conversation has reached a tipping point of importance. As it may have invaded your bubble as well, I'm speaking, of course, about Deshaun Jackson, who posted anti-Semitic posts in favor of the Black Lives Matter movement. He has since apologized, saying he didn't realize the greater context of those quotes, and he appreciates how the Jewish community too has also been systemically oppressed. An apology which was accepted by our former Super Bowl MVP, Julian Edelman, who suggested that he and Deshaun take turns visiting the Holocaust Memorial Museum and the Museum of African American History and Culture, both in Washington, D.C., because, and I quote, "This world needs a little more love, compassion, and empathy." This world needs a little more love, compassion, and empathy. There are those who have been upset that the supporters of the movement for Black Lives has universalized their struggle with statements like, "None are free until all are free," because statements like that and others can be seen as talking about the plight of the Palestinian people, and therefore anti-Israel. Sometimes within us and our people, Pinchas's anger and passion rise up, calling out to stop the plague of anti-Semitism. And this is too often needed. Still, the largest number of reported instances of hate in Ontario are against our community. It is too easy for others in positions of power and responsibility to share memes and tweets and concepts which link these feelings of discomfort and hate to anti-Semitism and cross the line clearly. And so we often need to find that anger within ourselves and speak out. And other times, we need Julian Edelman's call for a different approach, for love, compassion, and empathy, the willingness to listen across lines and create an even stronger and more united movement towards wholeness and towards peace. It says in the Talmud, "Had Pinchas been brought before us for trial, we would have said to him, 'The law may permit what you did, but we now in our community do not follow that law of immediate vengeance and violence without a trial.'" And even the Torah itself in telling the story has a letter of difficulty and rebellion. The Vav in the word shalom is written smaller in each and every one of our Sifrei Torah, almost as if the hook-shaped letter is shirking away from what Pinchas did with his spear, showing that wholeness achieved through violence is less. On this Shabbat, we're reminded of Pinchas's violence, his standing up for what is right to stop a plague. And on this Shabbat, we know that often the way to stand up and stop the plague of anti-Semitism is also with listening, with empathy, compassion, and love. Shabbat Shalom.